Are you absolutely sure about this, Commander? Lieutenant Vrissa asked, her 4 eyes blinking rapidly in succession, a clear sign of Quarian anxiety. The human is, well, she's a human, and that's a Nightstalker, the most vicious predator in 3 galactic sectors. Commander Zolter clicked his mandibles in annoyance. Do I look unsure to you, Lieutenant? Get the human. I watched from my observation post as Vrissa scuttled away, her exoskeleton gleaming under the harsh lights of the detention block. This whole situation was ridiculous. A human claiming to have tamed a Nightstalker? Preposterous. Those beasts had wiped out entire colonies. They were practically walking extinction events with teeth. My name is Kelladorn, chief xenobiologist aboard the Galactic Alliance vessel Indomitable. I'm what humans might call the reasonable one in this circus of a military operation. Not that anyone listens to the reasonable one, of course. That would be far too reasonable. The detention block doors hissed open, and there she stood, the human. She was small, as all humans are, with that peculiar soft skin they somehow survive with. This particular specimen had dark curly hair pulled back into what they call a ponytail, despite having no actual tail to speak of. Humans and their bizarre terminology. Stella Blackburn. Commander Zolter read from his datapad. Captured on the outskirts of the Vega system with a containment unit. Care to explain why you had a Class 5 prohibited biological weapon in your possession? The human, Stella, rolled her eyes. Actually rolled them. In front of a Quarian commander. Did she have a death wish? For the 1000th time, Spike is not a weapon. He's my pet. Spike, I couldn't help myself. You name a Nightstalker? Spike. Well, have you seen the spines on his back? She gestured with her small human hands. What was I supposed to call him? Fluffy. Commander Zolter slammed his appendage down on the table. Enough. Nightstalkers are responsible for the obliteration of 17 colonies in the past decade alone. They are classified as Omega-level threats by the Galactic Alliance. And you expect us to believe you have turned one into a house pet. Stella shrugged. Believe what you want, but I will bet your containment team is having one hell of a time keeping him calm without me there. As if on cue, an alarm blared throughout the ship. The overhead speakers crackled. Alert! Containment breach in Xenobiology Lab 3. All security personnel report. Commander Zolter's 4 eyes narrowed to slits. You did this. Did what? I have been sitting in your brig for 3 days. Stella threw her hands up. This is exactly what I warned you about. Spike gets anxious when we're separated too long. I tap into my comm unit. Status report on the Nightstalker. The response came through as panicked shouting and what sounded suspiciously like furniture being thrown across a room. Then, it's not attacking, ma'am. It's just destroying everything in its path. Like it's looking for something. Stella gave us a look that on a human translates roughly to "I told you so," a particularly irritating expression that seems universal despite our species' differences. Take her to the lab. Commander Zolter ordered, all 4 of his eyes twitching. If this creature kills her, we can at least document it for science. Your compassion is truly touching. Stella muttered. Point 4 guards escorted us through the corridors of the Indomitable. Crew members pressed themselves against the walls as we passed, their various appendages, tentacles, and pseudopods trembling. News of a loose Nightstalker spread fast. So, I ventured, my scientific curiosity overwhelming my better judgment. How exactly does one tame a Nightstalker? The same way you tame anything, Stella replied, walking with remarkable calm for someone about to be reunited with a creature known for disemboweling its prey. Patience, respect, and lots of treats. Treats? You bribed an apex predator with snacks. Spike has a weakness for synthesized protein cubes with mango flavor. Mango, earth fruit, sweet, little stringy. And this works on a creature that can bite through Durasteel. Stella grinned. Everything has its price, xenobiologist. Even monsters. We reached the lab, or what remained of it. The reinforced doors have been bent outward as if hit by a small explosive. Inside, scientific equipment worth more than most planetary budgets lay in ruins. And in the center of it all stood Spike, that I had studied Nightstalkers extensively, of course. Any xenobiologist worth their credentials has memorized the morphology of every class, 5th threat. But nothing prepared me for seeing one alive, unrestrained, and apparently pouting. The creature was massive, at least 2 meters at the shoulder, with obsidian scales that seemed to absorb the light around them. 6 limbs, each ending in claws that could shred battle armor. The signature spines along its back pulsed with bioluminescent blue energy. Its elongated head housed 3 rows of teeth, each the length of my forearm. And it was whimpering. "Spike, did these mean aliens scare you?" Stella called out, pushing past the guards. Every Quarian in the room reached for their weapons. Commander Zolter made a strangled noise that their vocal translator didn't even attempt to process. The Nightstalker's head whipped around, 6 eyes locking onto Stella. It made a sound like grinding metal, a sound I had heard in countless historical recordings right before mass casualties were reported. And then the beast bounded toward her like an oversized puppy, skidding on the polished floor and nearly knocking over what remained of our advanced genome sequencer. "Hey, big guy." Stella scratched under what I presumed was the creature's chin. The Nightstalker leaned in her touch, its massive head nearly knocking her over. "Did you miss me? Did you trash the nice aliens lab because you missed me?" "This is impossible," whispered Lieutenant Vrissa. "Nightstalkers are solitary apex predators. They don't form bonds. They don't have the neurological capacity for attachment." "Yeah, well, clearly someone forgot to tell Spike that," Stella replied, now rubbing the creature's belly as it rolled onto its back, nearly crushing an analysis station in the process. "He's just a big softy once you get to know him." "How?" Commander Zolter demanded, his voice uncharacteristically high. "How did you accomplish this?" Stella continued petting the purring monstrosity. "Found him as a hatchling. His nest had been destroyed by poachers. I was surveying the planet for my company, mineral rights assessment, boring stuff. Heard him crying and, well, couldn't just leave him there. So you adopted it?" I asked, struggling to process this information. Him nodded. "And yeah, I guess I did." She fished something from her pocket, small cubes with an orange tint. "Spike, treat time." The Nightstalker immediately sat upright, its 6 eyes focused intently on the cubes. With surprising gentleness, it extended a forked tongue and delicately took the treats from Stella's outstretched hand. "Good boy," she cooed, as if praising an ordinary pet instead of a creature responsible for more deaths than some interstellar conflicts. Commander Zolter cleared his throat. "This changes nothing. The creature is still classified as a biological weapon under Galactic Alliance Code 478B. Both it and you will be detained until the Council decides your fate." Stella's smile faded. "And what happens to Spike in the meantime?" "Standard procedure for Class 5 organisms. Sedation, containment, possible termination if deemed necessary for public safety." The air in the room suddenly felt colder. Spike must have sensed the change in Stella's demeanor because the creature rose to its full height, spines glowing brighter, a low growl emanating from its throat. "That's not going to work for us," Stella said quietly. "Spike doesn't do well with sedatives. Weird metabolism, and he really doesn't like being separated from me." "These are not negotiable terms, human," Commander Zolter stated firmly. "Guards, prepare the containment field." What happened next occurred so quickly that our ship's security footage had to be slowed to 25% speed for the official report. Spike moved like liquid shadow, positioning himself between Stella and the guards. His spines flared, releasing a pulse of energy that temporarily disabled every piece of electronic equipment within 5 meters, including the guards' weapons. "I'd really reconsider that approach," Stella suggested calmly, placing a hand on Spike's flank. "He's protective." I stepped forward, my scientific mind racing. "Commander, if I may, this is an unprecedented opportunity. No one has ever documented a domesticated Nightstalker before. The research potential is extraordinary." "Research?" Commander Zolter sputtered. "That thing could kill everyone aboard this vessel." "But it hasn't," I pointed out, "despite having ample opportunity. In fact, It appears to have caused only property damage while searching for its owner. Stella nodded appreciatively in my direction. Spike's not a threat unless I'm threatened. Or unless he's hungry, I guess. Speaking of which, it's almost feeding time. Lieutenant Vrisa's exoskeleton paled significantly. Feeding time. Relax, Stella laughed. He eats synthesized protein. Hasn't hunted live prey since I found him. Though he did once demolish my ex-boyfriend hoverbike when the jerk tried to kiss me goodbye after dumping me. Spike's got strong opinions about loyalty. Commander Zolter looked like he might explode, all four eyes bulging in different directions. This is not a negotiation. The Alliance protocols are clear. Spike took a step forward, his massive claws leaving indentations in the metal flooring. The guards backed away instinctively. Look, Stella said, her voice taking on an edge. I get that you have got rules, but I have spent 4 years with Spike. We have traveled to 17 planets together. Not once has he harmed anyone who didn't try to harm me first. You want to contain him? Fine, but I stay with him. That's my offer. You are in no position to make offers. Commander Zolter hissed. Actually, I interjected, she appears to be in exactly such a position. Commander, may I speak with you privately? Reluctantly, Commander Zolter followed me to what remained of the lab's anteroom. This could be the scientific discovery of the century, I whispered urgently. A human has somehow formed a symbiotic relationship with the most feared predator in the galaxy. Think of what we could learn. Think of how many crew members could die, he countered. If that creature wanted to kill us, we'd already be dead. You saw how it disabled the guards' weapons. That was a warning, not an attack. Commander Zolter's antennae twitched in irritation. What are you suggesting? Temporary research authorization. Let me study them together. We keep them in secure quarters, but not separated. I document everything. If there's any sign of true danger, we can always revert to standard protocols. The Council will have my exoskeleton for this, he muttered. The Council will give you a commendation when we present our findings, I corrected. Imagine, instead of trying to exterminate Nightstalkers, what if we could work with them? The military applications alone, that got his attention. Commander Zolter had never met a weapon he didn't like. We returned to the lab, where Stella was now sitting cross-legged on the floor, the massive Nightstalker curled around her like a protective barrier. We have a proposal, Commander Zolter announced. Temporary research authorization. You and the Spike will be given quarters together. Chief Xenobiologist Kella will study your relationship. Any sign of aggression from the creature will result in immediate termination. Counterproposal, Stella replied without missing a beat. We accept the research arrangement, but any termination order requires proof that Spike acted without provocation. And I want recreation time for him. He needs exercise. Exercise, Lieutenant Vrisa squeaked. He likes to run and play catch. Catch? I couldn't help asking. With what? Usually reinforced Durasteel balls. Or occasionally annoying drone ships that get too close to my transport. Stella smiled innocently. After much negotiation, and one incident where Spike demolished another analysis station when Commander Zolter raised his voice, we reached an agreement. Stella and her improbable pet would be given secured quarters with access to one of our cargo bays for exercise time. I would conduct research on their relationship, and in return, Stella would share her methods for communicating with the creature. We escorted them to their new quarters. I found myself walking beside Stella while the guards maintained a respectful, terrified distance. Can I ask you something? I ventured. Why a Nightstalker? Even if you found it as a hatchling, you must have known what it would grow into. Stella glanced up at me, her small human eyes holding a surprising depth. On Earth, we have a saying, it's not about the size of the dog in the fight, it's about the size of the fight in the dog. I don't understand. Humans are small, physically weak compared to most species. Easy to dismiss. She reached up to scratch Spike behind what passed for his ear. The massive creature leaned into her touch. But we have survived because we make friends in unlikely places. We see potential where others see only threat. And what potential did you see in a baby Nightstalker? Stella smiled, an expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. The same potential everyone else missed in me, I guess. Sometimes the things the galaxy fears most just need someone to give them a chance. As the doors to their quarters closed behind them, I couldn't help but wonder if we'd made a terrible mistake or were on the verge of a revolutionary discovery. One thing was certain. The human and her impossible pet had just turned every xenobiological textbook I'd ever studied into fiction. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a tiny voice whispered an unsettling question. What else might humans be capable of taming? Entry 47, Xenobiological Research Log. I dictated into my recorder. 2 standard weeks have passed since human subjects Stella Blackburn and Nightstalker specimen Spike were placed under observation. Their behaviors continue to defy all established research on predator-prey dynamics, symbiotic relationships, and basic survival instinct. I paused the recording, watching through the one-way observation panel as Stella tossed what appeared to be a reinforced durasteel sphere across the cargo bay. The massive Nightstalker bounded after it, spines glowing with excitement rather than the battle rage for which the species was infamous. Amendment to prior entry. I continued. The subject appears to be playing fetch with a creature responsible for the Halcyon massacre. Lieutenant Vrissa sidled up beside me, her exoskeleton clicking nervously. Commander Zolter wants an update for his report to the Council. Please tell me you have something concrete to justify this arrangement. I gestured at the scene before us. A human is playing catch with a Nightstalker. What more does he want? Science, Kella. Measurable data. Something beyond human woman befriends space monster would be appreciated. I sighed, tapping my datapad to display the results of my research. Phoenix. Preliminary neurological scans show significant development in the Nightstalker's frontal cortex, the area typically associated with higher reasoning and emotional regulation. It's nearly double the size documented in wild specimens, meaning it's evolving Vrissa, or rather, co-evolving with its human companion. Its brain is physically restructuring to accommodate what appears to be a genuine emotional bond. Vrissa's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. That's disturbing. That's revolutionary, I corrected. But there's more. Watch this. I pressed the intercom button. Stella, could you demonstrate the communication sequence we discussed? The human nodded, then turned to the Nightstalker, who had returned with the durasteel ball, now covered in impressive teeth marks. She made a series of hand gestures. Nothing elaborate, just specific movements of her fingers and palms. Immediately, Spike dropped the ball and lowered his massive body to the floor, head resting on his front limbs. Those are similar to old Earth military hand signals, I explained. She's adapted them for Spike's visual processing abilities. She can communicate at least 30 distinct commands without speaking a word. Impressive, Vrissa admitted reluctantly. But does it make the creature any less dangerous? As if on cue, the cargo bay doors opened and a maintenance drone hovered in. Before anyone could react, Spike leapt to his feet, spines flaring with blue energy. The drone froze in place, its systems temporarily disabled by the electromagnetic pulse. Spike, stand down, Stella commanded. The Nightstalker immediately retracted his spines, the glow subsiding. The drone's systems rebooted, and it continued its programmed path, thoroughly oblivious to its near destruction. You were saying? I asked Vrissa with what humans might call a smug expression. Fine, I will tell the commander we are making progress, but he's going to want more than party tricks. The council is pressuring him for a decision on whether to classify this as a controlled research project or a containment breach. After Vrissa left, I entered the cargo bay, maintaining the respectful distance that Stella had recommended. Even after 2 weeks, being in the same room as a fully grown Nightstalker made my skin tingle with primal fear. Your lieutenant friend doesn't like us much, Stella observed, scratching Spike behind what passed for ears on his elongated head. The creature made a sound between a purr and a growl, a sound that, under different circumstances, would have had me running for the nearest escape pod. Vrissa's species was nearly wiped out by a Nightstalker incursion 2 centuries ago, I explained. They have particularly strong cultural memories. That explains the extra twitching whenever Spike moves. I settled onto a cargo container that offered both a good vantage point and proximity to an emergency exit. I need to ask you something that's been bothering me since you arrived. Shoot. Stella continued petting the massive predator who had rolled onto his back, exposing an armored belly that could withstand direct plasma fire. Why were you in Vega System? It's restricted space, a known breeding ground for Nightstalkers. Stella's hand paused momentarily. Research. You expect me to believe you are a researcher? I didn't say I was a researcher. I said I was doing research. She resumed, petting Spike, who made a disgruntled noise at the brief interruption. Looking for more like him. More? You want more Nightstalkers? The idea sent a shiver through my primary nervous system. Not for me. For Spike. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine. He's alone, Kella. The last of his kind from his nesting area. I thought maybe he might be happier with others of his species. Nightstalkers are solitary predators, I reminded her. They come together only to mate, and often those encounters end in one killing the other. That's what your textbooks say. But your textbooks also say they can't be tamed, and yet. She gestured to Spike, who was now contentedly gnawing on the Durasteel ball. Before I could respond, an alarm blared throughout the ship. Red emergency lights flashed, and the automated system announced, Alert, unidentified vessels approaching. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. Spike immediately rose to his full height, spines beginning to glow. Stella placed a hand on his flank. Easy, big guy. Not our fight. My communicator buzzed. Kella, get to the bridge. Commander Zolter's voice commanded. And bring the human. We have got a situation. What about Spike? I asked. There was a pause, followed by a resigned sigh. Fine, bring a monster too. But if it eats anyone, it's on your head. The bridge of the Indomitable was a flurry of activity when we arrived. Tactical officers rushed between stations, weapons systems hummed to life, and in the center of it all stood Commander Zolter, his exoskeleton rigid with tension. There, he pointed to the main view screen. 3 vessels. Breached our perimeter 5 minutes ago. No response to communications. I studied the ships, sleek, predatory designs with distinctive red markings along their hulls. Vexari raiders, I murmured. What are they doing this far into Alliance space? The commander's mandibles clicked in agitation. Looking for trouble, clearly. And they have found it. Stella stepped forward, Spike close at her heels. Several bridge officers noticeably flinched. Vexari, you said? They are hunting for something. And how would you know that, human? Commander Zolter demanded. Because they are the ones who destroyed Spike's nesting area. They are poachers specializing in rare predator species. There's a black market for Nightstalker parts, scales, spines, venom glands. They are worth a fortune to certain collectors. I turned to her in surprise. You never mentioned this. You never asked why I was so protective of him. She replied evenly. Now you know. The tactical officer interrupted. Sir, they're launching fighters. Attack formation. Commander Zolter squared his shoulders. Battle stations. Prepare to engage. The Indomitable shuddered as its shields absorbed the first volley from the Vexari ships. Stella stumbled, nearly falling before steadying herself against the console. Spike growled, a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through the entire bridge. They are targeting our propulsion systems, reported the tactical officer. Trying to disable us rather than destroy. They want our cargo, Stella said grimly. Or rather, they want him. She placed a protective hand on Spike's massive head. Commander Zolter turned to her. How would they even know he's aboard? Vexari have sophisticated bioscanners. They can detect specific species from incredible distances. It's how they track their prey. Stella's voice hardened, and they have been after Spike for years. Another barrage hit the ship, this time sending several crew members tumbling to the floor. Emergency systems wailed as damage reports flooded in. Shields at 64% and dropping, announced the tactical officer. They're concentrating fire on our aft sections. 2 more hits like that, and they will breach our hull. I watched as Stella knelt beside Spike, whispering something in his ear. The massive creature seemed to be listening intently, his 6 eyes fixed on her face. What are you doing? I asked, making a suggestion. She replied cryptically, then turned to Commander Zolter. I can help, but you will need to trust me. And Spike. The commander laughed bitterly. Trust a human and a monster? In the middle of a battle, your shields are failing, your weapons aren't penetrating their defenses, and they're about to board your ship. What exactly do you have to lose? Another hit rocked the vessel. Shields at 41%, came the urgent report. Commander Zolter's antennae twitched in what I recognized as frustrated defeat. What do you propose? Open the main launch bay. Let us out. Out? Into space? That's suicide. Stella smiled, an expression that sent chills down my spine. For them, maybe. After a moment's hesitation, Commander Zolter nodded. Do it. But if this is some kind of escape attempt, it's not, Stella assured him. But you might want to record what happens next. For your scientific archives. As Stella and Spike hurried from the bridge, I found myself following them, curiosity overriding my sense of self-preservation. Commander Zolter called after me, but his voice was lost in another explosion as the Vexari ships made another pass. By the time I reached the launch bay, Stella had already equipped herself with a spacesuit, one of our emergency units, modified hastily to accommodate her human form. Spike, meanwhile, needed no such protection. Nightstalkers were known to survive in vacuum for extended periods, another evolutionary advantage that made them such feared predators. You are not seriously going out there, I said, watching as she checked the suit seals. Someone has to show these poachers they have messed with the wrong ship. She patted Spike's flank. Ready, buddy? The Nightstalker spines pulsed with bright blue energy, brighter than I'd ever seen them. I realized with a start that he was excited. Wait, I called as she headed toward the airlock. You never told me. How did you really tame him? There has to be more to it than just finding him as a hatchling. Stella paused, her helmet under her arm. You want to know the big secret? The thing your scientific reports will never capture. She looked me directly in the eyes. I never tamed him at all. I didn't need to. What does that mean? It means that sometimes the galaxy's most dangerous creatures choose their own path. Spike shows me. I just had the good sense not to run away. With that, she donned her helmet and entered the airlock, Spike following like a shadow. The outer doors opened, and the vacuum of space beckoned beyond. Without hesitation, Stella activated the propulsion unit on her suit and launched herself out into the battle, the massive Nightstalker at her side. Through the bay's viewport, I watched what happened next, a scene that would later be described in my official report as tactically unprecedented and scientifically impossible. Spike moved through space like he was born to it, his 6 limbs propelling him with surprising grace. The Vexari fighters, so focused on the indomitable, didn't notice the comparatively small targets until it was too late. The Nightstalker latched onto the first fighter, his claws piercing the hull as easily as if it were fabric. Blue energy pulsed from his spines, and the fighter's systems went dark, disabled by the electromagnetic pulse. Stella, meanwhile, maneuvered between laser blasts with surprising agility, directing Spike with hand signals that were visible even through the chaos of battle. Together, they moved like a coordinated unit, predator and guide, weapon and wielder, perfectly synchronized at MY communicator crackled. Are you seeing this? Commander Zolter's voice was filled with disbelief. Every impossible second of it. I confirmed point one by one. The Vexari fighters fell to Spike's attacks. Not destroyed, but disabled, left floating helplessly in space. The larger vessels attempted to target the Nightstalker, but he moved too quickly, his dark scales almost invisible against the backdrop of space. And then, unbelievably, the Vexari began to retreat. The remaining fighters scrambled back to their motherships, which were already turning away from the Indomitable. They are running, Commander Zolter said, his voice filled with wonder. A single human and a Nightstalker drove off 3 Vexari Raider ships. Not just any human. I murmured, watching as Stella guided Spike back toward our launch bay. A human who understands something we don't. Hours later, after the damage control teams had completed their work and the Indomitable was once again secure, I found Stella in the observation lounge. She sat alone, staring out at the stars, while Spike dozed nearby, his massive form curled up like a content house cat after a satisfying hunt. "The commander wants to see you," I said, settling into the seat beside her. Something about a commendation and possibly a job offer. Stella laughed. "Not interested in becoming a weapon, thanks." She reached over to scratch Spike's head. "We have had enough of being feared. What will you do instead? You know the Council will never allow you to simply wander the galaxy with a Nightstalker in tow, won't they?" She turned to face me. "For today, after Spike saved your ship and crew, I think they might be persuaded to make an exception." I hesitated, then handed her my datapad. "My full report. I'm recommending that you and Spike be classified as independent research partners rather than subjects. It gives you certain freedoms under Alliance law." Her eyebrows raised in surprise. "Why would you do that?" "Because I finally understand what you have been trying to show us. It's not about taming monsters. It's about recognizing that monster is just a label we give to things we don't understand." Stella smiled, a genuine expression this time. "There's hope for xenobiologists yet. There's one thing I still don't understand," I admitted. "During the battle, when Spike disabled those ships, he could have destroyed them, torn through the hulls, killed the crews. But he didn't. Why? Because I asked him not to," she said simply. "And because he understands something most sentient species haven't figured out yet. Just because you can destroy something doesn't mean you should." Spike opened one eye, regarding me lazily before rolling onto his back in a silent request for belly rubs. Stella obliged, her small human hand looking absurdly fragile against the armored plates that could withstand direct energy weapons. "You know," I said thoughtfully, "there are other dangerous species out there. Other creatures labeled as monsters, hunted to near extinction because we fear what we don't understand. Thinking of becoming a tamer yourself, Kella?" Stella teased. "I'm thinking that perhaps humans have more to teach us than we realized." I reached out a hesitant hand towards Spike. "May I?" Stella nodded encouragingly. Slowly, fighting against every instinct in my body, I placed my hand on the Nightstalker's side. His scales were warm to the touch, smoother than they appeared, pulsing slightly with each breath. Not at all what I had expected. "See," Stella said softly. "Not so scary after all." As if to contradict her, Spike suddenly rolled over, his massive head coming to rest inches from my face. Six eyes stared into mine, unblinking. I froze, certain my scientific curiosity had finally led me to my doom. Then, astonishingly, the Nightstalker bumped his head gently against my shoulder, a gesture I'd seen him do with Stella numerous times. A gesture of affection. "Congratulations," Stella laughed. "You have been accepted into the pack." 3 days later, the Indomitable received new orders from the Galactic Alliance Council. Stella and Spike were granted unprecedented status as protected cultural exchange representatives, a hastily created designation that essentially allowed them to continue their travels with official sanction. Commander Zolter was initially furious, certain the human had somehow manipulated the Council. But even he couldn't argue with the results of our encounter with the Vexari Raiders, or the fact that news of a human who had tamed a Nightstalker had spread throughout the Alliance, capturing the imagination of countless species. As for me, I received a new assignment, accompanying Stella and Spike on their journey, documenting their interactions for scientific posterity. My colleagues called it career suicide. I called it the opportunity of a lifetime done on the day of our departure. Commander Zolter approached me in the launch bay, his mandibles twitching nervously. "Are you certain about this, Kella? Traveling with a human is dangerous enough. But that creature..." I glanced over at Spike, who was currently playing tug-of-war with Stella, using what appeared to be a piece of the ship's former communication array. "That creature saved your ship, Commander, and possibly changed how we view an entire species. Just be careful," he warned. "Humans have a way of complicating things." I nodded, gathering my research equipment. "That's precisely what makes them interesting. They see possibilities where we see only threats." As our transport vessel pulled away from the Indomitable, I activated my recorder for a final entry. Conclusion of preliminary research aboard Alliance vessel Indomitable. beginning extended field study with human subject Stella Blackburn and Nightstalker specimen Spike. Initial hypothesis: the relationship between human and predator represents an evolutionary anomaly. I paused, watching as Stella plotted our course, one hand absently scratching Spike behind his ear like appendages. The massive creature leaned into her touch, his spines glowing not with aggression, but with contentment. Amended hypothesis, I continued. Perhaps it is not the Nightstalker that has been tamed, but our understanding of what is possible. End record. As our ship jumped to light speed, I couldn't help but wonder what other monsters awaited our discovery, and what other truths humans might teach us about the creatures we thought we understood. After all, in a galaxy full of fearsome beasts, sometimes the most surprising thing isn't what can kill you, but what chooses not to.